This is Happy Human here with another update on Vanderbuild. So, first thing I want to say is that I'm back, back here posting an update finally. It's been a good week here. I've noticed that I've been able to put in some real concentration time as I'm able to here. So thank you for anyone that is following this project for your patience here. The last few weeks have been pretty hard with the death in the family and all that kind of stuff that I wrote about in my last two updates. But I am here finally this week with an update to the actual game. And the first thing that you see here is quite evident, should be, that there's a big shift in perspective. So instead of this over the shoulder, kind of behind the character view, we're changing to a bird's eye kind of top down view here, a little askew, so not completely top down. So let me talk about that a little bit. I found that using ChatGPT here was actually incredibly helpful for doing research on exactly how to do this. So this involved some changes to my Cinemachine object here that I'm using in Unity. It changed the body of my Cinemachine virtual camera to a transposer instead of the third person follow. And I changed my aim component to a composer instead of the same as follow target. There were some other tweaks and changes here in the camera, but it gave me this really nice kind of overhead looking down at the player's character view here that I really like. And I think it's really going to lend itself to this tycoon style game where you'll have more than one ship on the screen and you can zoom out or zoom in and see your trade routes that you set up going and watch those ships go about. And that will offer, I think, a nice opportunity to view that stuff that's not really possible in the over-the-shoulder kind of view that I had been using. Another thing that you might notice is the mouse cursor has changed here. So whereas before I was kind of locking the mouse cursor in the middle of the screen, now that it's a overhead kind of view, my idea here is that you should be able to click on these different screen elements. And so this was a asset packet that I found on the Unity store. I don't know that I love the style of it, or I should say that I don't know that the style of the mouse cursor really fits the game and what I'm going for. But one thing that it really has really nice is these little augmentations that you can put on here. So for example, when I hover my mouse cursor over land, I get a normal kind of pointer. If I hover it over one of these red NPCs, I get a little message bubble. And if I hover it over something that I can't interact with, I get a little forbidden icon. So I like the mouse pack because it had those kind of things. Again, maybe stylistically it doesn't fit exactly what I was going for, but it was only $10 and it was easier than making it myself. So the way I'm doing this here is every graphical frame, I'm shooting out a ray cast, casting a ray from the camera to the mouse pointer and seeing what it hits. And if it hits an object in the NPC layer, it gets this little message bubble. If it hits something in the land layer, it gets this normal icon or cursor. And then if I hit something else that's not in either of those two layers, then I get this little forbidden thing. And what that lets me do is now I can click my mouse and my little guy, my little green guy, actually moves around. And you can tell that the Cinemachine is doing a little, I don't know what you call it, like a little swagger as I move around. I'm not sure if I like that. I guess it's better than kind of initially, like, being hard locked on the target, and that would probably make this a little bit, jarring when you move. But it still has kind of a weird effect. So I might try playing around with that stuff a little bit as well. But the big thing here is that you click to move instead of using the WASD keys to move your character around. I haven't quite addressed the process of rotating the character to face the direction that it's walking in. Fortunately, because it is just a perfectly symmetrical cylinder right now, you can't tell which way the model is facing. So that will become an issue when I actually have a model that you can tell which way it's facing. But right now, it does just kind of work. And it works pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with that. So what I wanted to do now was actually just jump into the code here and show you guys a little bit of what this looked like here. And let me scooch up here to the top here. So this is the part of my pawn controller, which is the little green guy that's walking around there. And it does this is called during the graphics cycle. So this is all called from the update method in Unity here. And most of these changes in the code here, let me see here if I can click on my repo and show you what this code looked like. Mostly down here at the bottom, you can see what the meat of this code had been doing was polling the Unity input system, and this is the old Unity input system, I know that, the horizontal and vertical axes to figure out what the player had pressed on their keyboard, whether, which of the WASD keys they had pressed, and then store these into variables that could then be queried from the physics cycle. And that's what it had been doing. And if I get rid of that from my repo here, you can see that what it's doing now is really quite simple here. It's most of it's happening in this set walk target from input function. And what that's doing is just saying, if the cursor, which is my mouse cursor, can set a walk destination. So in other words, this is that ray that I cast out from the camera to the mouse cursor has hit something in the land layer, then this will be true. And if the left mouse button is down, and I know that this is not very clean or flexible here with the query polling the inputs directly in my controller object, this should be wrapped up into another layer that would let the player make preferences on how to change it and separate this input so you can have other input styles and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, it is simple and it works. And what that does is basically sets a new target for the pawn to walk to in this walk target class that I have. And walk target is really simple. It just contains a vector 3 and has a Boolean variable to say whether that is set to a particular value or false if it's cleared. So then what I have is jump down to the physics cycle here for walking. And this is where most of the changes were in this update. And a lot of those changes are right here in this function, in the get walk direction and speed function. And that function does pretty much exactly what you would expect it to. And what it's basically doing is faking out the axis input that I'd previously been using and deriving from those WASD keys. And it's pretty much faking that out and creating a vector, which you can see right here, which moves the pawn to the target from its current position. And to make sure that you're moving at a reasonable speed there. If the walked vector's magnitude is less than 1, which means its square magnitude will be less than 1, it's just a little, it's actually significantly faster to do this computation on the square magnitude. Then we move at the basically that vector, but otherwise if it's greater than 1, then we're normalizing that vector before passing it on. So you can't, walk super fast here and zoom across the screen. Let's see here. My next point that I wanted to make was figuring out when to stop walking was a little bit of a challenge and took a little bit of some trial and error. And that's kind of captured right here in this is close enough to stop walking function, which, sorry, highlighted the wrong spot, is actually implemented right here. That I had originally been comparing the X and Y positions, the deltas between the target and the position compared to epsilon, the mathf.epsilon value. And that was not working for me because the it never became true. Just trying to move the pawn that close never really got to a delta that was smaller than epsilon. So as you can see here, what I've kind of done is just choose a fraction that I'm going to call it close enough here, which is basically a 0.001 difference in position. If the pawn is that close to the target, then I'm going to call it close enough, and you can stop walking. So it's a little bit of a magic number here in my code right now. Actually, while I'm doing this, I am going to say to do move magic number so I can clean that up before I actually do my commit. The other fun thing that I ran into here was when I was moving my pawn around. Oh, it's going to try to recompile because I added a comment. I couldn't move over here to the bottom left. I could move up and I could move to the right, but if I moved both to the left and down in the screen, it wouldn't work. So why was that? That was because I had forgotten to take the, oh no, that is not correct. Sorry about that, guys. That is because I forgot to take these absolute value of this difference. So when you're clicking in the bottom left portion of the screen, it ends up being that my vector is going to move in the negative in the x and the negative in the y, and those are going to be large values in terms of magnitude, so they're not going to be closer to that. So forgetting that absolute value was a little bug that I had here that I fixed right before jumping on the video here for this weekly update. So that was kind of fun, interesting stuff. And then the last thing I want to point out while I'm still in the code here is just this move rigid body from walking. This function actually barely changed at all, which was kind of nice. It just gets this direction and speed passed into it. That's what we were doing before in this code. And then it just simply tells the player rigid body to move there as well. So I am going to have to, because this thing got confused, so I'm going to have to restart the game here really quick. But I just wanted to point out there are still obviously a lot of issues here. Although I can click and I can walk and move around, I can talk to an NPC as soon as that NPC is on my camera. So for example, I can't seem to click on that guy, but there we go. So I can click on that NPC and talk to it even though I'm really far away. So that's a little bit of an issue. That's because the way that the game used to work is you would look straight ahead at that NPC, and the ray that I was casting from the pawn straight forward where you were looking, that only went so far. So you would have to be very, very close to the NPC before you could actually talk. In this new model, I would want this to do something like, if I click on this NPC right here, I want to see the pawn move up close to the NPC, and then you would have the conversation appear. So that's one change that is going to have to be made. The other change is that this is like straight line pathing right now from the pawn to the target. So if my pawn is up here north of this building and I click directly south of it, well, my pawn's going to get a little stuck on that building. It's not going to figure out that I need to go around. Maybe if I do this I'm to the left of the building and I click to the right of the building, he's just going to get stuck there trying to go through the building rather than go around the building. So pathing is definitely something that I'm going to have to add. In fact, I think that's going to be the next part of what I focus on over the next couple weeks here, is adding that pathing. That's something that I've never done before. So that should be fun to research and figure out exactly how that works in Unity with the physics engine and all of that kind of fun stuff. So one last thing that I'm going to leave you guys with here is a fun consequence of not having any pathing in here as well, is that if I walk all the way up here to the land, to that kind of land, and I click on the dock, which is right here, well, a straight line is going to take me right into that water, and my pawn is going to fall into that water. So another thing that will have to be fixed. And that will be what I work on, and hopefully what you guys get to see in the next update here in a couple of weeks. Otherwise, thank you all for joining and viewing. And there, I'll set my pawn off as it falls into the water. Thank you very much for viewing, and thank you very much for your patience with the lack of updates here over the last couple of weeks. So I appreciate all of that, and I will see all of you in a later update.